Welcome to Friends with Fertility, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of fertility, reproductive health, and all the emotional journeys that are in between. I'm your host, Elizabeth King, a fertility expert dedicated to providing you with the knowledge, support, and inspiration you need on your path to parenthood. Whether you're just starting out, exploring your options, or looking for solidarity and advice, we are here for you. Let's embark on this journey together and turn uncertainty into empowerment and make friends with fertility. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to Friends with Fertility. Today we have Megan Hanson with the Recurrent Pregnancy Loss Association. I know it's a mouthful, so thanks for being here, Megan.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. I really appreciate it.
I actually came across you guys the first time at ASRM a while back, and I was like, thank God somebody is showing up here in this way, because I know that was really a pivotal point for me in my own story. And for some reason, I was thinking this morning even how different that can be for everybody. For some people, they're not really fazed by it and whatever. And then there's others like myself where it literally flips your world upside down. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into, standing up for this particular organization.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. And I'm glad. Sometimes you always wonder if you're going to these conferences and it's
Yeah.
like important or meaningful at all. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to know that's where you found us.
Yes.
Yeah, so my husband and I, this is all bred from personal experience. So when we tried to start our family back in 2015, so 10 years ago at this point, we had a series of 6 miscarriages over as many years. And, you know, after many diagnostic workups and multiple doctors and a couple specialists and everything that we could have possibly done medically to try and have a successful pregnancy, we were left with no real answers, an unclear, path forward of what we would do differently and unknown reason why this was happening. And so when we sat down and said, like, well, what happens now? I mean, there was the what happens now on our own. How are we going to move forward as a family and think about parenting? But there was also a like, what happens now with this experience? What do we do with this?
So over 6 years and no real answer to that. I think that just that alone is so disheartening, when you're in it, because we want to make sense of things. We want to know this is what's happening, which is causing this to happen. And therefore, if I don't do X anymore, Y is not going to happen. And so often we're in these situations where we never get those answers.
Yeah.
And especially specifically with recurrent loss, I often tell people, yes, do the panel, and which is a blood work, workup that you can do if you've had recurrent loss, but also have the expectation that it's probably going to come back that there's nothing. And that's really hard to get your head around when you're in it and you're trying to build your family. So I just wanted to touch on that, because I think that's where a lot of the frustration and anger and energy comes that needs to be healed after.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of, I mean, I know for me personally, it's been a couple years now, but unpacking that anger and feeling of betrayal of my body. Like, there was a lot of anger at my body, a lot of feeling that I had let myself down. And I think it does take a long time for that to heal. Um, but to go back to, what did we want to do with this? Exactly as you said, the most frustrating part of our experience was the lack of answers. And so we started RPLA, or Recurrent Pregnancy Loss Association, really to say, we don't think that this is good enough at this point. In 2020, it was at that point. Like, this isn't good enough. What can we do as the people who have lived through this? How can we come together and create an organization that helps advance research and builds community and combats that feeling of isolation in the meantime?
Right. And so what did that look like? I mean, it's one thing to go from the idea of it to then, okay, this, we're doing this and this is what it looks
Yeah.
like, and we're showing up at conferences now
Yeah, yeah.
and talking to people about it. So take us through the process. What did that look like for you guys? And were you both on the same page with like, yes, we're going to do this and it's going to be a real thing? Like,
Yeah.
how did that look?
Yes. Yeah, so I mean a lot of it looks like pretty boring, right? It's like, okay, you go through and you apply to the IRS for 501(c)(3) status and you like, buy a website domain and
Right, right.
start to like figure out GoDaddy's website builder.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is like the really boring stuff, but also like not the stuff that or at least not the stuff that I did in my daily life at that point. So it was like
Yeah.
a lot of learn as you go. Um, we were very aligned. I think in addition to this, I had really burnt out from my corporate job going through all of the losses that I had been through. And so it was very clear to me at that point in my life that I needed a change of direction, just personally and professionally. And so we were aligned on that as well. Um, and it really, the first program we got started is we really wanted to figure out, how do we fund some research here? How do we really focus on, how do we find the people who are working on finding answers and how do we support them in being successful? And then everything else sort of flowed from there. So, uh, we give a grant and um, that was one of the first things we got established. We have a partnership with the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. We give an annual research grant through them for anybody studying recurrent pregnancy loss, or US researcher. Um,
And how can people put into that
apply.
grant?
Yeah, you
Not
don't
apply
have
for the grant, but like if somebody wants to donate to the grant,
uh,
or both, I guess. Like, tell us a
yeah.
little bit about that now that I say that out loud.
Yeah, for sure. So you can donate. There are many ways to donate. You can donate through our website. You can donate via our social media accounts. Um, those are the two probably easiest ways. But there are then on the website like additional options if people prefer to donate stock or things like that. This summer we're going to do our first like awareness building run. So if people are like runners and want to do that, that'll be coming up in August. So there are plenty of ways to give to the organization, and then for the researchers from the research side of things, um, we align ourselves with ASRM's they have a funding calendar because they give many awards. We're just one of like the list that they send out the requests for, and it usually opens up in November timeframe, with proposals due in sort of December, January.
And since your guys' inception, have you seen any of your like direct correlation to research and that the funding you guys have provided has come to fruition? Because I feel like we live in a day and age right now where you're like, okay, like I'm giving my money here. Is it really going to what I think it's going?
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff, which I hate to sound so skeptical, but
No,
I feel like that's unfortunately where we are with questioning all things medical these days because of what we've been through in our country the
for sure.
last few years. It's like
For
where
sure.
what's
Yeah.
really happening and how do we know it's working for our benefit?
Yeah. It's a good question. So the let me be like, just for anybody listening that's not familiar, like medical research is expensive. We're giving a $40,000 grant in the world of medical research. That is like nothing. I mean, that's a baby grant. But the intent of this is to be a pilot grant, like to give a researcher some money to say, hey, I've got a great idea. I want to kind of test the concept, see if this is something. And upon doing that, then I might be positioned to apply to like the NIH and get millions of dollars of funding, which we're
Mhm.
not in a position to give, although I wish I was.
Yeah.
Um, but so it's a $40,000 grant. They have to use it in 2 years. And then they have to present results like 2 years from the date that they received the funds. So,
What happens if they don't do it in 2 years? Do you get that money
they have
back?
to get back the money. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. But
Okay.
so last year actually was the first year that we had like results presented from research that we had funded. So that was really exciting. It was now, it's with all things research, it's like you learn one thing and it opens up a list of like many other questions, but it was a PhD at the University of Utah, Dr. Worklamahu, and he was looking for inherited genetic markers that might lead to negative pregnancy outcomes or negative birth outcomes. So he basically was like identifying families where there was a history of loss, and not just like the individual, but like, let's look at mom, dad, aunt, like sister. So he was looking at family units, and then he would compare the genomes of like a whole bunch of different family members to look at
Awesome.
inheritance patterns.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so through that he identified a handful of potential targets related to stillbirth, and then
Hmm.
another several that may be implicated for earlier pregnancy loss or infertility or
Okay.
preeclampsia.
Interesting. I would love to
Yeah,
see that.
yeah. I'm the abstract. I think the full manuscript has not been published, but the link to the abstract is on our website, and I will
Oh,
send it to you. Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And so how does that, like, are you in communication with this student doctorate? I'm sorry, I missed which he
No, that's
was,
okay.
but
Professor. Yeah, he's a professor.
okay.
Yeah.
Were you guys in touch with him throughout the process? Was it like you knew your money was going there and then ta-da, here it is at the end? How does that look?
It's a little bit more of like the latter, like ta-da, here it is at the
Okay.
end. Like there is reporting that they have to submit halfway through to say, hey, this is like where we're at in terms of using the funds. This is exactly what they've been used for, and like here's any midterm outcomes that we've identified.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, certainly I'm in touch in the sense that like I have his email. Actually, one of my board members and I are going to be speaking at a summit next month that he's also speaking at. So,
Great.
um, definitely nice to have that now existing relationship. Yeah.
For sure. That's great. And so for somebody who is currently going through, multiple losses and kind of struggling with what to do next, and it's one of those not easy situations where you're realizing that this isn't working, but also still hesitant to go down to do the other route of surrogacy or egg donation or whatever. I feel like it's more normalized than it has been in the past to go down these other routes, but at the same time, when you have this idea for yourself and how you're going to build your family, you sometimes can go for a long time even though you're getting the same result of recurring pregnancy loss. So for somebody who's listening that's in that stage right now, what do you recommend for them as far as getting support and how to navigate the situation that they're in?
Yeah. Um, well, the first thing I would say is like I am so sorry because it is just a very dark place, and I know even though there are many people that have lived through this and are living through it, it feels so isolating when you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have a support group, a monthly support group. It's free, it's virtual. You can join from anywhere. It's the last Monday of the month. So I encourage anybody that could use that support to join that. But there are plenty of places to get support locally in person, fertility coaches, bereavement doulas. Like when I think when it comes to this, like the more support the better, because it is such a heavy emotional and mental burden. So the first thing I would say is like if you don't have a person or a place where you're getting support, give yourself that gift, because it really is important and helpful.
Mm-hmm.
From a like next step perspective, it's so personal, and all of the advice, like it sounds, I don't want it to say it sounds trite, but like what we all have our own, like we all have a limit of what we can take, and some people are going to make the choice to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying, and other people hit their limit earlier,
Yeah.
and that's a personal thing. It's like, there's no shame in that. If you decide this is too much and you want to try something different or stop trying entirely, that is okay. And if you're choosing to keep going, like that is okay too. And you can change your mind. Uh,
Right.
I don't know if that doesn't sound very profound, but like that's
No,
the
but it
truth of
is
how I
because
feel about it.
yeah, and I feel the same way. I also, having been through losses too, it's like you, in regards to the recurrent loss title, let's say, right? It used to be 3. I don't know if it's moved to 2 now. I know there was some doctors that will do it at 2. When I say do it, to let you
Yeah.
run the labs at that point. Um, and I think that's hard too, because you feel like, well, I've had 2. Why can't I qualify to find out this information now
Right.
instead of we continue to go down the road? And I think part of that helps with getting those supports, like you just said. And it is so multifaceted when you go through
Yeah.
this, that it's not just the grieving the loss of something that's unknown that you may not ever get an answer to. With that in and of itself is traumatizing, but all the other things that go along with it that we don't really consider when you're in the moment of it, and how heavy that can be. I mean, I am
Yeah.
a bereavement doula, and I've even talked to people that have had losses 10 to 20 to 30 years ago, people my
Yeah.
mom's age, of saying, like, I never dealt with this. I didn't know how. And
Right.
we used to just brush it under the rug. And now I realize, like, my heart has been hurting for these babies for years and years and years. And I didn't know that it was an option to try to heal that. And I
Yeah.
get goosebumps saying that, because it really is so healing when you can find somebody that can hold the space for you, who
Right.
understands. Nobody's been through your exact situation, but who can understands what that's like. And I remember, I've shared this before, but I'll share it again if it can relate to anybody. My After my first loss, I asked for a therapist that specialized in a miscarriage. And
Yeah.
I was given a recommendation by the local hospital. And my husband was outside waiting for me while I went in here. And I came out of there, like, more upset than I was going in, because I was just looking for hope, and I wanted her to say, like, I've been through it, I understand, I have kids now, whatever. I was looking for hope, really.
Yeah.
And as a therapist, and I know this has changed very much since then, which was 6, 7 years ago from that first loss, or maybe longer now, I guess. They are more open to sharing their own story, and to being there to relate to you in those ways. But for me,
Yeah.
that was really, really important. It was to find somebody who understood what I was going through, and to
Yeah.
also say, it's going to be okay, and you will get to the other side, and I can help you, or hold your hand, or just be there to let you vent or cry, or whatever it is that you needed. And so I think the reason I share that again is, it might not look like the first person you see,
Right.
but don't give up on it, and
Right.
continue down that path. And I think what led me specifically to get in, because I'd been a coach since 2008, but what led me to bereavement doula, even after I was a fertility coach, was dealing with people at different stages of loss, and recognizing, holy moly, this is a whole new thing if you're terminating for certain reasons, or if you're having a stillbirth,
Right.
or whatever. And holding that space was very different than somebody who had an early loss, although it didn't discount the pain of
Right.
those
Right.
things. So I also want to say that too, because I find in a lot of feedback from people, when they're in group settings, they feel like they're not worthy enough to be in that group
Right.
because they didn't have it as bad as Susie Q, or
Right.
something like that. And I just want to say that if it's you that's feeling that way, try to just be in those moments, and know that you're going to take maybe one small thing of healing from it, even though your story may not be exactly the same as others. But there is so much to be healed in that. And don't compare your healing time frame to anybody else, because it's going to look different for everyone, especially where you're at in your journey. Like I said this morning, I was thinking about people who have losses, and it doesn't bother them so much, right? They have some way of kind of not having the amount of gravity around it as the next person might. So there's no judgment to any way that you deal with it, but finding these resources to help you, I think, is really helpful.
Yeah. I love what you said. I mean, so many things. I'm like, yes, 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 and
Mhm.
I mean, I think absolutely, like, the first place you go for support may not be the best fit, and that's true for doctors too, right? The
Of
first
course,
doctor
yeah.
that you're seeing may not be the best fit.
Hmm.
Um, But yeah, I agree with you. Grief is sort of the overarching umbrella, and there are different flavors or nuances to it. But you know, grief is personal and it changes, and so how you're going through it is to you. And in terms of like for when the people in our support group sometimes, like, and I'll say for myself personally, right, like I had 6 losses. Some of them hit me way differently than others. Some of them
Hmm.
I even like just picked myself up and like went to work, and
Right.
others like put me on the couch for a while.
Yeah.
So it's and I could judge that or dive into that, but I think it's you know, you've been anybody that's going through this, like you've been through something, it's real, it's hard, and you're doing it right. Like,
Mhm.
yeah.
Did you ever get a diagnosis of what was happening for yourself?
No, I had some partial diagnoses. And I will say the people that I think are sort of the leading experts in this, both clinically and from a research perspective, absolutely. I don't think anybody should have to wait until they've had 3 losses to be evaluated for this. And I encourage everybody to ask for testing earlier and seek second opinions. I do think I have so much respect for doctors, and also I want us all to be good advocates for our own care.
Mhm.
Um, no, I had a lot of partial diagnoses. I have my own hypotheses, but it was never very clear why this was happening. Um, so unfortunately, and I don't think I ever will get one. So it's yeah.
And were you able to go on to have your family?
Yes. So I actually now have 2 children. We used a gestational carrier to have our daughter, who is now 3.5. And
Mhm.
then I was able to my 7th pregnancy, I actually carried and was able to give birth to my son. So um
Congratulations on
yes,
both.
thank you. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I say to some people, like, I had unexplained recurrent pregnancy loss and I had an unexplained successful pregnancy. I have absolutely no idea why that one worked. I didn't do anything differently. Um, so it's
Yeah, I
unexplained as
feel
well.
like it goes back to this kind of
Yeah.
surrendering to the ability to not have answers. And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but most people that come to see me are very type A and have
Yeah.
everything in line. And I've done all the things. And sometimes in life, things are just bigger than us.
Yeah.
And surrendering to whatever power you believe in, to trust that and say, I have to make peace with the fact that I might never get an answer for that, but this is a way
Right.
that my family came, and
Yep.
to just have that simple gratitude for that. And I think that in and of itself, of surrendering to the process of whatever that looks like for you, is not ever talked, like, it's never been talked about in
Right.
family histories that I know of to date. It's
Right.
just now starting to become a thing, in the last few years. And I think that's why it is so important for us to have those conversations, because we can now go to our parents, or if you have your grandparents, and say, what was going on? Did you ever have any losses that you were aware of?
Yeah.
Or how did that go for you? And that can then help our further generations to know this isn't so unusual. And thank goodness we do have the science now where people are doing studies to see,
Right.
we have modern science so that people don't die at childbirth as they used to so often, and all the other things. But I think, again, giving yourself that grace to know it might not look the way we had hoped it to look, but there's other options and other ways to get to your happy ending, so to speak.
Yeah, that process of like you've been thrown a curveball and now you have to reimagine your life and it's going to potentially look very different than you expected. That is really hard work, but it's like something that we all, yeah, yeah, we have to figure out how to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a constant work in progress, but especially with fertility, especially with loss, I think that it's even more deep because it's so beyond our control.
Yeah.
And there are so many things in life that we do have the ability to control or change, or do something to change the outcome. And in these ways, so often it really is it doesn't look like that. I wish
Yeah.
I could say it does, but there's so much more to it. So, how can people follow you guys, be part of what you're doing, all the good stuff?
Yeah. So I would say a couple ways. I am active on Instagram. Everything gets reposted to Facebook, but I'll be honest, I don't really manage that. So follow us on Instagram.
Okay.
Our handle is RPL Association. Also join our mailing list, because the mailing list is kind of what I send out a monthly newsletter, and it just has like events and updates, and sort of you can follow along our work, research updates, all that stuff. You can join the mailing list through our website, which is www.rplassociation.org. Um, my email is all over anything. So, feel free to DM me or send me an email. I'm pretty easy to find. Um, yeah, and there are plenty of ways to get involved. So just email me if that's your passion, and, pay attention if you're a runner, because we'll be doing that virtual run in August. I need to start training for it because I am such a couch potato. So I'm like, oh my God, I have to train for our own run. Like, this is going to
How
be
did
a
you
very
choose to do a run?
One of my board members, my God, one of my board members, he is 78 and he runs like 5 miles every day,
Wow,
and he
God
loves these
bless.
virtual runs, and he's like, we got to do one. We got to do one. And I'm like,
What's a virtual run? What do you mean by
like,
virtual run?
so it's not, because we don't have like a brick and mortar, and we live sort of on the internet. You just run, and it's a
In your
little
own
bit of an honor
location?
system. You run on your own, you
Okay,
track your progress, and then you put in your date and your time on the website, and it'll still kind of aggregate everything and show leaders in each
okay,
category, but
okay.
you do it on your own instead of at a park all together on the same time and day. Yeah.
Got it, got it. Okay, so will you, though, be doing anything in your Seattle area with others, or are you also just going to be doing it kind of on your own?
mean, I encourage everybody to like find a friend to run with. So I probably will, I'll make my husband and maybe some of the other people I know come do this with me. But there's not going to be any like formal, there will be no city streets blocked off.
Noted.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you guys, just from what I had seen when I saw you guys at ASRM and then checked out your website at that time, there are so many great resources. And again, this is so near and dear to my heart because of how it changed the trajectory of my life and my experience in showing up to help people in this realm. So I'm really excited for you guys and can't wait to see how this continues to evolve over the years, because I do think that it's going to be looked at more and more through the clinical perspective. And I'm so happy about that. So thanks for your time being here today, and we will chat again soon. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Friends with Fertility. We hope that you found the stories, insights, and tips as inspiring and informative as we did. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Your friends with fertility are here for you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and more fertility resources. Until next time, stay hopeful and keep believing in your journey, and know that we are sending you lots of love.